New Year's Eve was never my thing. Don't get me wrong. I like the drinks, the music, the energy. But the whole New Year, New Me vibe felt like an empty promise, especially when you're nursing a hangover by noon on January 1st and realize you're still the same emotionally avoidant dumbass who gets nervous making eye contact. Still, I always showed up to Ryan's party. Every year, like clockwork. His house had become the unofficial HQ for our friend group's annual countdown. String lights, cheap champagne, whatever Spotify called a party banger playlist. The usual. But the real tradition? The resolutions game. Here's how it worked. Everyone wrote a resolution for someone else in the group. Something they should do in the coming year. Could be a joke, a roast, or dead serious. It was anonymous, and once the clock struck midnight, we took turns opening and reading them out loud. I'll be honest, I almost didn't come this year. Work had been insane. I'd just gotten over a flu that made me want to remove my own lungs. But when Ryan texted, "Don't be a bitch, we need you for the game," I knew I was screwed, so I went. And of course he was there. Eli. He was the last person to join our little group, a friend of a friend who'd somehow gone from +1 at a Friendsgiving 3 years ago to permanent fixture. Tall, kinda quiet unless he was buzzed, thoughtful in this way that made it hard not to notice him. And I noticed. All the time. He was also my roommate, which didn't help. We'd been living together for about a year and a half. Separate rooms, separate routines, but somewhere along the way, those late-night grocery runs and shared breakfast turned into something different. Or maybe I just imagined that. Maybe I just wanted it to be different. Anyway, we were all spread around Ryan's living room. Me, Eli, Ryan, Jamie, and Clara. Everyone buzzing off tequila and nostalgia. Someone had brought out the resolution bowl. Slips of paper, folded and crammed in, names scribbled on the outside. Ryan clapped his hands and grinned. "All right, it's time. The moment you've all been dreading." We groaned, but nobody backed out. Rules were rules. Jamie read hers first. "Stop dating guys who make you cry in public." She raised her eyebrows. "Wow, we're starting strong." Laughter. Clara went next. Then Ryan, a mix of sincere advice and petty jokes. Then it was Eli's turn. He reached into the bowl, pulled out a folded slip, and squinted at the name. "Ah, this one's for me," he said, flipping it open. He read it and smirked. Mine says, "Kiss someone you've been too afraid to admit you like." Oohs all around. Classic group chaos. Someone threw a popcorn kernel at him. "Spicy?" Clara teased. "Is it someone in this room?" Eli shrugged, grinning, but said nothing. Just folded the paper and slid it into his hoodie pocket. Then it was my turn. I unfolded mine, trying to ignore the heat creeping up my neck. It read, "Let yourself believe he could like you back." I blinked. There was a beat of silence. Then Ryan said, "Damn, that's kind of poetic." Jamie nodded slowly. I liked that one, but I barely heard them, because I recognized the handwriting. It was Eli's. And when I glanced up, he was already looking at me. The rest of the group kept joking around, tossing jabs and guesses about who Eli might be into, but I wasn't really listening. My heart was thudding in this weird, uneven way, like I'd just stepped off a roller coaster I didn't remember getting on. I sat there, holding the resolution in my hand, staring at the words again. Let yourself believe he could like you back. It was vague, open to interpretation, but I knew that writing. I'd seen it on sticky notes stuck to our fridge. Buy more oat milk. Don't forget rent is due Friday. Good luck on the meeting today. That slightly slanted E, the way he dotted his I's a little too high. It was Eli's, no question. And if that was the resolution he had written for me, then what the hell did it mean? Did he know? Was it just a coincidence? Was I about to pass out from overthinking this? I folded the paper and shoved it into my back pocket before anyone could ask me to read it again. When the countdown hit 0 and everyone screamed, "Happy New Year," I let them pull me into hugs and take blurry selfies, but I felt completely separate from the noise. Like I was underwater. Eli hugged me too. Tight, warm, familiar, and I tried not to tense up. I could smell his cologne, that clean cedar scent he always wore. I'd loved it since the first time I smelled it, and now I was even more confused than before. Was he playing with me? Did he know I liked him? Was this his weird way of teasing it out? By 12:30, half the group was tipsy, and someone had started heating up leftover pizza. I slipped out onto the balcony to breathe. It was cold, really cold, but I didn't care. I leaned on the railing and stared out at the quiet street. A couple fireworks popped in the distance. I tried to replay every interaction I'd had with Eli over the past few months, searching for proof, something that could make sense of all this. But all I had were half glances and moments I couldn't trust. He was just nice. He was always nice. The sliding door opened behind me. Of course it was him. "Hey," he said, closing the door gently behind him. I didn't turn around. "Hey, too much party?" Something like that. He came to stand beside me, both of us facing the street. "You good?" he asked after a second. "You've been quiet since the game." I hesitated. "Yeah, just thinking." He nodded. "Can I ask what your resolution said?" I swallowed. "You were there. You heard it." "I know," he said, "but I didn't see it. Thought maybe you'd show me." I didn't answer. Just pulled the folded paper from my pocket and handed it to him. He opened it, eyes scanning the line. Then he looked up at me. "That's a good one," I snorted, trying to act casual. "Yeah, well, whoever wrote it's clearly full of shit." "Why do you say that?" I shrugged. "Because I don't think the guy the first like is into me." Eli was quiet. Then, carefully, "You know who wrote that, right?" I turned to face him. "Yeah, I do." His eyes searched mine for a second. Then he nodded. "Okay." That one word, "okay," carried so much weight I didn't know what to do with it. "Why'd you write it?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He looked down, then back up. "Because I meant it, and because I hoped you'd figure out it was me." My breath caught in my throat. "I wasn't sure if it was too much," he said. "Too on the nose." "Depends," I said slowly, "on what you meant by it." He exhaled, his breath a cloud in the cold air. "I meant," he said, "that I think you've been scared to believe someone could feel the same way about you that you feel about them. And I meant that. I wish you'd let yourself believe I could." There it was. Clear. Unequivocal. The moment I thought would never come. I couldn't speak for a few seconds. Just stared at him, trying to process. He broke the silence. "I'm not good at this," he said. "I know I'm quiet, and I don't always say what I'm thinking, but I've been trying to find the right time to tell you, and I figured maybe this was it. I wanted to say something. Anything. But I was frozen in place, overwhelmed." Eli rubbed his hands together for warmth, glancing at me. "If I read it wrong, I'm sorry. I really hope I didn't." "You didn't," I said, finally. He blinked. "I didn't." I shook my head. "You didn't." And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt my chest loosen. "I've liked you for a while," I said. "I just didn't think you'd ever, I don't know, see me that way." He smiled then. Small, warm, genuine. "I see you," he said. "I've always seen you." After that, we just stood there, me, blinking like a deer in headlights. Eli, smiling like he'd just said something simple and true, like he was asking if I wanted coffee instead of casually admitting he had feelings for me. The air between us felt charged in this quiet, electric way. Not explosive, not dramatic, just different. More. I think part of me had always pictured this moment, us standing somewhere alone, finally laying it all out. But I'd imagined it louder, more awkward, more messy. This was quieter, but heavier, like something was clicking into place that had always been off by a few degrees. I cleared my throat. "Okay, but what does this mean?" Eli turned to lean on the railing, his side brushing against mine. "It means I like you, and I'm not trying to mess with you or make you guess anymore." He looked at me, eyes steady. But I also don't want to rush you into something you're not ready for. God, the way he said that, so patient, so gentle, made my chest feel too tight. I let out a breath, half a laugh. I've been ready. I think I just never let myself admit it. Why not? I hesitated. I didn't want to get it wrong. He nodded, like he understood completely. Same. We stood in silence for a minute. It wasn't awkward, just thoughtful. A soft moment carved out of the chaos of the party, still thumping behind the glass door. You really didn't know I was into you? I asked finally. Eli smiled. I thought I saw it. But sometimes, when you want something too badly, you start second-guessing everything. That hit me a little too hard. I knew exactly what he meant. The fear of seeing things that aren't there. The fear of becoming a joke to someone you care about. It's easier to stay silent, to pretend the little moments don't mean anything, than to risk ruining what you already have. So, what changed? I asked. He looked down, then back at me. You? Me? You started pulling away, he said quietly, not in a dramatic way. But I could tell something was up. You'd get quiet when we were alone. You'd stay in your room more, laugh a little less. I swallowed. I hadn't realized it had been that obvious. I thought, he continued, maybe you were trying to let go of something, maybe someone. And then I wondered, what if it was me? It was. Of course it was. I shook my head, half ashamed, half something else. I was trying to get over you. He smiled again, soft and sad. And I was trying to work up the nerve to tell you how I felt. We both laughed then. It was small, but real. A shared kind of ridiculousness, like we were finally letting ourselves admit just how long this had been building. I don't want this to be a weird New Year's thing, I said, quieter now. Like something that only feels real because it's midnight and we're buzzed and everyone's full of feelings. It's not, he said quickly. At least not for me. Not for me either. Eli looked down at my hand, resting on the railing, then back at my face. Can I do something? I nodded before I even knew what he meant. He stepped in, slow and careful, and leaned in until his forehead was resting lightly against mine. Not a kiss, just closeness. His breath mingled with mine in the cold air. I closed my eyes. Feels kind of unreal, I said, just above a whisper. I know, he said, but it's not. And when his lips finally touched mine, soft and unsure at first, then firmer, I didn't freeze up. I didn't second guess. I just let it happen. It wasn't perfect. My nose bumped his. We both smiled mid-kiss, like we were still half in disbelief. But it was real. It was him. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us said anything right away. I think we both needed a second to let it settle. Then Eli said, "Want to get out of here? Back to the apartment?" He nodded. "Unless you want to stay and answer everyone's questions about who you kissed at midnight." I laughed. God, yeah, let's get out of here. We slipped back inside, made vague excuses about being tired, and ducked out the front door while everyone was distracted with karaoke and trying to force Jamie into a onesie. Clara gave me a raised eyebrow as we left but said nothing. As soon as we got in the car, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Eli looked over at me. Still with me? I turned to him, smiling. More than ever? The drive home was quiet, but not in a weird way. It was the kind of silence that happens when both people are thinking the same thing, but neither one needs to say it out loud just yet. Eli had one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on his thigh, fingers tapping like he was playing out a rhythm only he could hear. I kept stealing glances at him out of the corner of my eye. The streetlights made his face look softer, somehow, less guarded than usual. He caught me staring at one point and just gave me this small, almost smug grin. "What?" he asked. I shrugged. "Nothing." He laughed, shaking his head. "You're a terrible liar. You're a smug bastard." He just smiled wider. "You like it." He wasn't wrong. By the time we pulled into the driveway, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do with myself. Like, what did this mean now? Were we What, a thing? Was I allowed to call it that yet? We'd kissed. He liked me. I liked him. That much was out in the open. But everything else still felt like walking through fog. There was no map for this. We stepped inside, and it was like the entire energy of the apartment had shifted. Same place, same furniture, same faint smell of whatever candle Eli had last lit, but different, more charged. I set my jacket down on the kitchen counter, unsure of where to go or what to say next. Eli lingered near the front door for a second before finally speaking. So, I echoed, my heart doing that annoying thing where it speeds up for no reason. He walked toward me slowly, like he was giving me time to change my mind, to back out, to reset this whole night. But I didn't want to, not even close. "Can I ask something?" he said. "Yeah, anything." He stopped in front of me, hands in his pockets. "How long have you liked me?" I let out a slow breath. God, I don't even know when it started. Maybe a year ago? Maybe longer. He nodded, like he wasn't surprised. "What about you?" I asked. Eli hesitated, just for a second. "Probably since that time we watched that awful horror movie marathon and you fell asleep halfway through the second one, with your head on my shoulder." I blinked. "That was like last February. I know. You've liked me since then and you didn't say anything?" "Dude, you didn't say anything?" He shot back, but he was smiling. I didn't want to mess up what we had. Roommate situations can get messy. That's putting it mildly. He stepped a little closer. "But I'm tired of pretending it's nothing." "Yeah," I said. "Me too." There was a pause, just long enough for me to feel it, that pull, that low hum between us that had been there for months but unspoken. "I don't want to rush this," he said quietly. "I don't want to make it weird or pressure you into anything." I looked up at him. "Eli." "Yeah? You're not pressuring me. You're literally doing the opposite. I feel weirdly calm right now, like I've been holding my breath for a year and I can finally stop." He exhaled like maybe he'd been holding his too. "Same." Another pause, another half step closer. "You want to sit?" he asked, nodding toward the couch. "Yeah," I said, already moving. "Let's sit." We collapsed onto the couch, and I didn't even think twice about leaning into him. It felt natural, automatic, like we'd been doing this all along and just hadn't realized it. He slung his arm over the back, and I settled in close. His fingers brushed the back of my neck. Barely there, feather-light. I felt goosebumps rise across my skin. "So now what?" I asked, half laughing. "Are we like dating?" He tilted his head. "Do you want to be?" "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, I do." He nodded. "Then yeah, we are." That was it, simple. No fireworks, no dramatic declarations. Just a quiet agreement in the middle of the night, sitting on our shared couch, under the dull glow of a leftover string of fairy lights. We sat like that for a while, talking, laughing, quietly figuring out what this new version of us looked like. At some point, I must have dozed off against him, because the next thing I remember is waking up to the sun starting to peek through the blinds, Eli's hand resting lightly on my knee, his head tilted back on the couch, fast asleep. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone in it. Morning light filtered in through the blinds, casting faint lines across Eli's face. His hair was a mess, and his mouth was slightly parted, breathing slow and even. He looked peaceful, like he hadn't moved all night. My neck was a little sore from the angle I'd slept in, leaning against him on the couch, but I didn't care. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to risk disturbing him or whatever this new fragile peace between us was. It had been less than 12 hours since the kiss. Less than 12 hours since both of us stopped pretending. But something about waking up like this, his arm still resting lightly across my leg, the air still warm with that unspoken comfort, made it feel like it had been years coming. I stared at him for a while, just watching, taking it in. Eventually he stirred, blinking against the sunlight, then looking at me with that half-groggy, half-playful smirk I'd somehow missed, realizing I loved. "Morning," he said, voice gravelly. "Hey, did we really just fall asleep on the couch?" "Sure did." He stretched a little, letting out a quiet groan. "My back hates me." "Worth it?" He smiled. "Yeah, totally." For a moment, we just sat there, the air between us a little more open now, a little warmer, Then he sat up straighter. "So this is real, right?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we're not going to chalk this up to a holiday moment and pretend it didn't happen when we're both back to work and things get busy and we're just roommates again." I looked at him, and I knew what he was really asking. "Are you still going to want this in daylight, with the real world knocking again?" I reached out and laced my fingers with his. "This is real," I said. "I don't want to go back to pretending. Do you?" He shook his head. "Not even a little." We sat there like that for a few minutes, just holding hands in the quiet. Eventually, the real world did start creeping back in. Emails, laundry, dishes. That slightly overwhelming post-holiday list of things to get back on top of. But something had shifted. The way we moved around each other in the apartment was different now. There were more touches, more lingering looks, less effort to mask what we were feeling. That first full day of being something more than friends felt strange and perfect all at once. Eli made coffee the way he always did, precise, borderline obsessive, but instead of leaving my mug on the counter, he brought it over to me on the couch, sat down beside me, and leaned his head on my shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. I kissed the top of his head without even thinking about it. He didn't flinch, didn't joke, just smiled into his cup. We didn't label anything. We didn't rush into making announcements or telling everyone in our friend group. But we didn't hide either. When Clara texted me later asking, "Where did you two disappear to last night?" I just wrote back, "Home with Eli." She sent back 5 emojis, 3 eyes, 1 fire, and a peach. So she probably knew. I wasn't ready to have the big group discussion yet, and neither was Eli. We talked about it later that night, just curled up together in my room like it was the most normal thing in the world. He looked at me and said, "Can we just keep this to ourselves for a little? Not because I'm hiding. I just want this to be ours first." I nodded. I was thinking the same thing. We lay there in the dim light, our fingers tracing lazy circles on each other's arms, and I thought, this is the softest anything has ever felt. I don't want to rush this. I just want to live in it. Later that night, I was brushing my teeth when Eli came into the bathroom behind me, leaned down, and kissed my cheek in the mirror. Nothing big, just quiet and certain. "I'm really glad you read that resolution," he said. "Yeah," I said, turning to him with a grin. "Me too." Because that silly little tradition, our joke of writing fake goals for each other, had accidentally become the most honest thing either of us had done in a long time. And somehow, it had turned a maybe into a yes. We didn't talk about labels right away, and maybe that was the best part. There was no pressure to define it. No midnight DTR define the relationship conversation. Just a quiet understanding that whatever we were doing, it was working. There were mornings where I'd wake up and find him already making breakfast, 2 mugs lined up on the counter like some cute domestic routine had quietly slipped into place without either of us naming it. There were nights we'd watch movies, feet tangled under a blanket, the rest of the world fading out. Eli didn't change much outwardly. He was still the quiet guy who left little Post-it notes on the fridge and meticulously folded his laundry the second it finished drying. But he started to sit closer. His hand would brush against mine and stay there. He'd smile a little more. Sometimes he'd say things like, "I like this version of us," and that would be enough to make my chest squeeze in the best way. I noticed I changed too. I wasn't pulling away anymore. I wasn't stuck in my head trying to decode every moment or overanalyze his tone. I stopped holding back that part of myself that had always wanted to hope for something more. It wasn't perfect, of course. No big transformation ever is. There were moments where I caught myself falling into old patterns, reading too much into a pause, second-guessing a look. But then Eli would do something stupidly simple, like offer me the last slice of pizza without asking, or touch my knee during a conversation like it was just natural, and I'd remember that I didn't need to panic anymore. He liked me, I liked him, and that was enough. Until the first time we had to exist as us in front of other people. It happened 2 weekends after New Year's. Ryan invited everyone over for drinks, just a chill post-holiday thing. No theme, no pressure. Normally I would have said no. I'm not great with crowds when I feel like something's on the line. But Eli said he'd come if I came, and that was enough to tip the scale. We didn't talk about whether we'd act different around them. I think both of us were just playing it by ear. Clara opened the door when we arrived. She looked between us, eyes narrowing slightly. You two carpool or something? Something like that? Eli said, already smirking as he handed her a bottle of wine. Inside, the apartment was already buzzing. Ryan on aux, Jamie pouring tequila shots, someone's random friend trying to fix the Bluetooth speaker for the 5th time. We made it about an hour before something shifted. Eli was standing near the kitchen laughing with Clara and Jamie about some disaster story from a ski trip, and I caught myself just watching him. Not in a creepy way, just that quiet kind of awe that happens when you realize the person you like is also liked by everyone else. That he's kind and warm and easy in ways you can't fake. Then Clara turned her head slightly, caught my eyes across the room, and raised one brow. I tried to look casual. She was having none of it. She crossed the room a few minutes later, her drink in hand. So, she said, you and Eli. I swallowed. What about us? Don't do that, she said, giving me a look. You've had heart eyes for him since last spring, I blinked. It's that obvious? Only to everyone with working eyes. But the real twist, she said, nudging me slightly, is that he clearly has heart eyes for you now. I smiled without meaning to. We're figuring it out, I said. Well, you're cute as hell, she said. Don't mess it up. I'll try not to. A few minutes later, Eli made his way back over to me and leaned against the wall next to where I was standing. She grill ya? He asked under his breath. Only a little. Hand? She approves. He chuckled. Good. That would have been a problem. Then, without looking around or checking who was watching, he reached over and slid his fingers through mine. It was subtle, but not hidden. And I felt it, that quiet shift, from secret to seen, from maybe to this is real. Nobody made a big deal out of it. There were a few smirks, a couple of nudges, but no one teased us or asked 100 questions. It was just accepted. Normal. Like we'd always been this way, and everyone else had just been waiting for us to get our act together. Later that night, curled up on the couch back home, I said, so I guess people know now. Eli looked over at me, his face lit by the soft glow of the hallway light. Yeah. Is that okay? It's more than okay. He kissed me, soft, lingering. Then he whispered, I like not hiding it. For all the warmth and slow burn sweetness of those first few weeks, it didn't take long for reality to sneak in. Dating your roommate, no matter how easy it feels at first, comes with its own weird learning curve. Because unlike other couples, you don't get that natural distance, the coming and going, the time apart that gives you something to look forward to. You're just around each other all the time. At first, it felt like a dream. Brushing teeth side by side, cooking dinner together, sharing the same blanket without either of us needing to ask. But routine has a funny way of dulling the shine on even the things you love most. I noticed it during the 3rd week of Eli's midterm crunch. He was swamped, stressed, barely sleeping. And instead of talking, he started shutting down. He'd leave early, come home late, eat dinner in silence with his laptop open. I tried not to take it personally. Tried being the key word. Because deep down, I'd started to expect something different from him now. Something more open, more present. I didn't just want to be the guy he liked. I wanted to be the person he came to when things got hard. One night, I made dinner. Real dinner, not just reheated leftovers, and waited for him to get home. He walked in, looked tired, gave me a brief smile, and said thanks, before disappearing into his room. No kiss, no real conversation. I sat there at the table, picking at cold pasta, wondering if maybe I'd imagined the whole thing, if maybe this wasn't as serious to him as it was to me. I didn't sleep much that night. My brain wouldn't let me. And in the morning, I couldn't hold it in anymore. You've been distant, I said, standing in the hallway, watching him shove a protein bar into his backpack. Eli paused. I've just been busy. I know, I said, but you're not talking to me, he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to shut you out. You're not just my roommate anymore, Eli, I said. I'm not trying to be dramatic. If something's wrong, I want to be part of the solution, not someone you keep at arm's length. He looked at me, and I saw it. The guilt, the stress, the exhaustion. I'm not used to this, he admitted quietly. Having someone who notices when I disappear. Who cares enough to call me out? Well, I said, you've got that now, like it or not. He stepped forward, touched my waist, resting his forehead against mine. I do like it. I like you. I just need to figure out how to be better at all of this. We'll figure it out, I said. Just don't shut me out, okay? He nodded. And somehow, that little bump, our first real one, made everything feel even more real, more grounded. Not some fantasy, but something we were actively choosing, day by day. It got easier after that. He made more effort to check in. I stopped, assuming distance meant disinterest. We got better at knowing each other's rhythms. He had a habit of needing space when overwhelmed. I had a habit of spiraling when I felt ignored. And slowly we started bridging those differences with small, conscious acts. One night, after a hellish day for both of us, we climbed into bed and just lay there, not touching, not talking. Just breathing in the same quiet. Then he reached over, rested his hand on my chest, and said, I never thought I'd get to have something like this. Like what? Something that feels safe. I swallowed hard. Yeah, I whispered. Me either. In a way, that moment said more than any I love you could have at the time. We were building something. Not flashy, not perfect, but real. And maybe that's what made it so easy to keep choosing him. Even when things weren't always smooth. It wasn't a resolution, it was a commitment. One we hadn't written down, but one we felt deeply every single day. It's wild how one night, one piece of paper, can start something that shifts your entire world. At the time, it felt small, a game, a stupid little tradition we laughed about over cheap drinks and takeout. But a year later, here we were, still living together, still figuring it out, still choosing each other every day. We made it through that first semester without imploding. We met each other's families, awkwardly, quietly, cautiously. His mom loved me. My sister asked if we were serious, and then hugged me when I said yes. Eli cried in the car afterward, and I didn't make fun of him for it. We learned how to fight without hurting, how to love without smothering, how to be two people growing at different speeds, in the same direction. And then, suddenly, New Year's Eve came around again. Ryan hosted, obviously. Bigger this time, more people, more food, actual decorations. But the bowl was still there. Clara handed it to me with a grin. Back by popular demand. I laughed. Who's demanding this? Me, she said flatly. So we all did it again. Folded up paper, scribbled names, wrote fake advice, and thinly veiled truths. A few people were new. Most of us were the same. A little older. A little wiser. A little more real. I watched Eli across the room as he wrote his. He caught me looking and smirked. Don't try to read it, he said. I can't help that you write like a serial killer, I said. Later, as midnight crept closer, Ryan passed out the resolutions. I opened mine and read it silently, then read it again. It said, stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. He's not going anywhere. I looked up. Eli was already watching me. He gave the tiniest shrug, like my throat tightened. Not in a sad way, just in that overwhelming, too many feelings at once kind of way. Because he was right. I still had that part of me, deep down, that kept bracing for it to fall apart, that kept waiting for the dream to end. But a year later, he was still here, still choosing me, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. When it was his turn, he read his aloud without even checking it first. It said, propose already. The whole room lost it. Clara spit her drink. Ryan actually fell off the armrest. Jamie screamed, yes, please. Eli turned 10 shades of red. Okay, wow, that was not subtle. He looked at me, eyes wide, laughing. Don't worry, I didn't write that one. I held up my hands. Wasn't me either. But I was still smiling, because, as wild as it sounded, I wasn't scared of that anymore. Not with him. Not with us. Later that night, after the countdown, after the hugs and the noise and the leftover cake, we sat outside on the steps. Just the two of us. watching the sky go black again. He bumped my shoulder. You okay? Yeah, I said. Just thinking. About? Last year. Everything that's happened since. He nodded, quiet. You know, I added, technically that resolution someone wrote for you is still on the table. Eli snorted. Let me do it on my own timeline, smartass. I leaned against him. Take your time. He wrapped an arm around me, pulled me closer. I still have that one you wrote me, I said after a while. Oh yeah? Let yourself believe he could like you back. I kept it. Eli smiled against my hair. I'm glad you did. Because I did believe it now. I believed in him. In us. And not because of a resolution. Because of everything we'd built since. Because love isn't about a moment. It's about what you do after the moment passes. And every day since that first one, he's proven me right.